Hi, my name is Lisa. I'm 47 years old and I have autoimmune encephalitis. I was diagnosed in February of 2018. Encephalitis is a devastating brain disease that affects about 500,000 people worldwide. The type that I have is LGI1 autoimmune encephalitis, and it affects, or is known to affect, about 0.83 in a million people. How I understand it is that my body is producing an antibody that is attacking my brain. It causes memory issues, issues with cognitive function. It affected my motor ability, so my ability to walk. It caused seizures for me. And in some people, it also causes psychiatric symptoms. In my case, I didn't have psychiatric symptoms. And I'm very grateful for that because I went straight into neurology and started working with neurologists to try to figure out what was going wrong inside my body. Well, the first symptom I noticed was that my forehead was getting numb and tingly, and it was almost like I was wearing a mask over my forehead and under my eyes. Then I started developing symptoms of numbness and tingling down my left side, which eventually progressed into gait changes where I would limp and be weaker on my left side. Then I started having moments that we as a family started calling episodes, where if I was walking or if I was talking and I felt some symptoms coming on, almost like a wave washing over me, I would have to stop talking or stop walking or stop chewing, whatever I happened to be doing, and let that momentary episode pass. And I would only find out much later after I had a grand mal seizure, where I now know I had an aura, where I saw flashing lights over the lake, where I was sitting in a chair by the dock. And my kids tell me that I became very, very stiff and my eyes were rolling back in my head and I was staring vacantly at the sky, and I shook so violently I fell out of the Muskoka chair. And when I woke up, the next thing I realized was I looked around and all I could see were the legs of paramedics and firemen, and I could hear my friend Karen's voice near my head saying, "It's okay, sweetie, you've had a seizure." And my boys had been smart enough to call 911 and then call my friend to come and help, while it took emergency services about 20 minutes to get to where we were at our cottage in Canada. So I'm sad that that happened when my two young sons were home as the only people to call 911 and take care of that, because it was very frightening and very scary for them. But I'm also really grateful that they handled the situation, and I'm super proud of them. And I'm also really grateful that seizure happened, because that seizure elevated our quest to find out what was wrong with me. And shortly after, I had a 24-hour EEG where I went home with the EEG monitor, and for 24 hours it monitored the brain activity. And in that 24 hours, it was found that I was having up more than 40 partial focal seizures in a day. And subsequently, I received a diagnosis of epilepsy and was started on seizure medication. The seizure medication reduced those seizures to about 10 seizures a day. But you can imagine that kind of assault on your brain leaves you very fatigued. And I was sleeping 20 or more hours a day. After I started on the seizure medication, the doctor was tweaking it and trying to reduce my seizures to zero. I had a number of MRIs to look at what was going on inside my brain, and it was found that I had some scarring and some inflammation on my mesial temporal lobe. And I also had a lumbar puncture, or a spinal tap, where they drew some spinal fluid that was sent to the Mayo Clinic for antibody testing. And unfortunately, that spinal tap was inconclusive because not enough fluid was drawn to run the whole panel. I continued to have seizures, We didn't know for a long time that the Mayo Clinic didn't have enough fluid to run the full panel. So my doctor decided that I should have a course of IVIG. IVIG is an infusion that you have in an outpatient setting where for 4 days I went for an infusion. So on the 3rd day of my IVIG infusion, I had my last seizure, October 25th. From that point on, I have not had a seizure that I'm aware of. In November, I had a booster of IVIG to keep my body or help prevent my body from producing more of these antibodies. That was the plan. But unfortunately, I continued to deteriorate. It didn't seem like the IVIG was going to be enough. I didn't have another seizure, but I did have more symptoms of numbness and tingling down my left side, and I had more problems with my walking, where I was limping and dragging my foot. And I also started having really big problems with my memory. I had trouble remembering, losing my train of thought in the middle of what I was talking about, remembering what my kids had told me about what they needed me to sign for school the next day. And when I was talking, I couldn't, like I would just pause in the middle and have to regroup and like really struggle to remember the next phrase that I was trying to say. Or if I was texting a friend, I couldn't remember if it was two or two, like T-O, T-W-O, or T-O-O that I was trying to say in the sentence. And I've always been a good speller. So things like that were telling me that something still wasn't right. When we found out that there hadn't been enough fluid sent to the Mayo Clinic for testing, my neurologist at the time ordered my antibodies to be tested through blood work, and I went and had that done. The results from that came back on December 6, 2017, and I had tested positive for voltage-gated potassium channel antibodies. And I know now that I've been tested and tested positive for LGI1 antibodies, that LGI1 antibodies are a subset of voltage-gated potassium channel antibodies. So when that test came back positive for voltage-gated potassium channel, I continued to decline quite rapidly. And by December 11th, I had been admitted to Methodist Hospital for a 5-day course of high-dose IV steroids. So while I was in the hospital having the steroids, I felt very weak and very tired. My memory was really challenging me. I had a lot of difficulty remembering things, forming words, having conversations. But the most significant change was that I became really challenged with mobility. And on my 2nd day in the hospital, I was issued a walker. I could no longer walk to the bathroom by myself, and I really depended on that walker. I was really leaning on it, really dragging my left foot, and really, really struggling. When I left the hospital, I used the walker for another 3 months, fully dependent on it to get around my house and to, get into the building at physical therapy and that sort of thing. And my legs were unrecognizable to me. They were so thin and weak. Over the next 6 months, I had many hours of physical, occupational, and speech therapy. Initially, I had 5 hours a week of these therapies, tapering to 2 hours a week by June of 2018. When I was first assessed by the physical therapists, I couldn't even walk for 2 minutes with the walker. That's how weak I had become in a very short space of time. I loved the pool therapy. I worked really hard in physical therapy, and I found speech therapy fascinating because of the way that it helped me rebuild my cognitive function and teach me tricks and strategies to help me with my memory and the things that I struggled with. In February 2018, I traveled with my husband to the Duke University Medical Center to seek a second opinion from Dr. Christopher Eckstein. We did this because everything that we had been reading suggested that the more aggressive and the earlier treatment is initiated, the better the outcome. He and his team through further testing, diagnosed me with LGI1 encephalitis, which is a subset of the voltage-gated potassium channel encephalitis that I already knew I had, and proposed a more thorough treatment plan. With that in mind, the recommended course of treatment was to start infusions of rituximab, teach my body to stop making the antibody that was attacking my brain. And rituximab infusions were started, and now I have infusions every 6 months to prevent relapse and continue on my path to healing. We're very, very glad that and grateful that we had the opportunity to visit Dr. Eckstein at Duke University. This is his main area of research and specialization, so he's very up to date on the latest studies and the latest approaches to treating this disease, which I feel is really, really important with such a new and rare disease. So here I am in January 2019. I no longer have the walker or the cane that I transitioned to. I still go to therapy for 2 hours a week to continue to build my strength and recover. I try to walk 2 miles 5 days a week. I have started driving locally in about a 7-mile radius close to my home. I meditate regularly. I try to be mindful and stay present in the moment because I think that's really important for brain healing. I feel grateful every day to my friends and family who have helped me on this journey, and so very grateful to have a diagnosis and have a treatment plan. I still do suffer from brain fatigue. It affects my memory, have difficulty recalling words or finishing a sentence smoothly without pausing to kind of gather my thoughts. I have a hard time in social settings where there's a lot of background noise or multiple people are excitedly talking around me, but I still try to do it because I love being with my friends. I have a hard time in the car. That's why I don't drive very far. It makes me very, very tired to have all of the movements around me, and I'm a very nervous passenger now because I'm seeing things and processing things at a different speed than I used to. But still, I feel like I'm on the road to recovery. So it's important for me to tell my story, not just for my own healing journey, but also because it is so important that people know about the devastating effects of this disease. It's important because it is rare, and not every doctor knows about it. Not every family member would know that their loved one was suffering from something like this, and it was affecting their brain. It's important that people receive early diagnosis, accurate diagnosis, and early treatment so that they can regain what this disease takes away from them. It's really, really important. World Encephalitis Day is February 22nd, and I invite you to share this film with as many people as you can and help me raise awareness. Thanks for sharing my journey. I look forward to walking on.